All right, well, it's 6:30, and man, what I'd planned on, saying, man, how awesome is it that we've got this wonderful day to come out and be together and encourage each other and get us past that midweek hump. But we do have an incredible day that we have to come out and encourage each other and try to get each other past that midweek hump. I appreciate all of you being here. I know it's always good for me to be here, and I hope it's good for you to be here too. Even doing, at-home Bible studies and, things of that nature at home, you just don't get that oomph that you get when you come here and you see each other's faces and you're able to talk and smile and just be with each other. And so I think it's a great thing that we're here this evening with each other. I'm glad everybody made it safe, and of course, pray that everybody makes it home safe. Well, this is part of our summer series, and so far it's been a great series. We've had some excellent speakers that have talked about some great things, brought out some great points. It seems like, again, part of that encouragement I get is every time I come here and hear someone speak, and we start getting a little deeper into what we're studying, I always get that, oh, wow moment that happens for me. I still get those. That I see something that I didn't see before, or something's explained to me that I've just read over before and never really thought about, hey, what does that mean? And we talked about this on Sunday morning, and some of you, this is like the third time that I've stood before you in the last 2 weeks, and I apologize for that. You won't have to deal with this anymore in the next couple of months. But I'm starting to see more and more. There's really nothing that happens by accident, especially in Jesus' ministry, that everything has a purpose. Everything that he says has a specific purpose. There's nothing that just happens. There's nothing that just comes out of his mouth. There's always a reason and a purpose. And so the summer series this year is Dinner with Jesus. And have had some great speakers, and we've got some great speakers to come, and some great situations where a lot of really interesting things happen over the dinner table. And I've said it before, the dinner table is probably the neatest place at a firehouse because it's where everybody gathers. It's where the truth comes out. It's where there's some admonishment that takes place. There's encouragement that takes place. And so I think that goes back to not just a firehouse, but all over the dinner table, and that setting, that time, and that place where we all come together is a great place. And so I think there's some great stories. Before we get started, our 6:33 just went off, and so if you don't mind, I'll lead us in a word of prayer, and then we'll get started with the lesson this evening. Dear Heavenly Father, we're just so thankful for this opportunity we have this evening for all of us to come together, Lord, to study your word, to encourage each other, Lord, and just to be together in fellowship as we should be as members of your church, as one body. Our Father, we ask that those who aren't here with us tonight, those that are traveling, that you would watch over them, put your hand of protection over them and keep them safe. Lord, those of our group here, your church, your local church here, Lord, those that are having medical issues, God, we just continue to pray for them. We know that you are with them, and Lord, we just ask that we pray for the best outcome possible for each and every one of them. Lord, we thank you for your word, and Lord, I just ask that everything that's said here tonight be truth and be pleasing to you. We ask these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen. All right, so tonight, Jesus is having dinner with Martha and Mary. Okay, so this story is recorded in Luke, the 10th chapter, verses 38 through 42. And I'm going to read those because it's a very short passage. And then we'll pull this apart just a little bit and talking about it. So in verse 38, it says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him, Jesus, and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Please tell her to help me." Jesus said, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about so many things, but few things are needed, or indeed really only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." So, to set the scene here just a little bit, this takes place after Jesus had sent out the 72 disciples to go ahead to the area where he was soon to be traveling and to proclaim that the kingdom of God had come. And without getting into that story, this is different than when he sent the 12 out, because when he sent the 12 out, he originally sent them to the Jewish people, right? Because he was sending the word to the Jews first, but now he tells these 72 to go to all these different villages and proclaim that the kingdom of God is at hand and is coming. And so they went out. They had great stories when they came back, stories of victory. And so Jesus and his disciples headed out to visit these towns and these villages, to work miracles, to proclaim the word, for Jesus to teach. And so as Jesus and his disciples were traveling, it says they came to a village. Most likely this village is going to be Bethany, because as we see further, especially in the book of John, that is where Martha and Mary and Lazarus dwelled. And so this was most likely the village of Bethany. And we're kind of assuming at this point that this is the Mary and Martha that is the sisters of Lazarus fame, right? So a few little deductions, things that we can sort of maybe infer about Mary and Martha and what we can know about them. Well, we're never given any age for any of the three siblings, right? We kind of all assume that they're probably close to Jesus' age, but we're never really told that. There's never been any mention of husbands for Mary and Martha, or the fact that even Lazarus had a wife. And so even in John later on, when Lazarus is raised from the dead, it doesn't say anything about Jesus coming to the home where Mary and Martha is and Lazarus' widow being there. And you would think that would be pretty predominant if it was. So it kind of gives us some thought that, well, were they younger and they just hadn't married yet? Maybe they were older and they were widowed or widowers, or maybe they were just confirmed bachelors and bachelorettes. We don't really know. But there's never any mention of any type of husbands or wives or anything. From looking at this, we see that probably at least Mary and Martha maybe lived together. Lazarus isn't mentioned in this story here in Luke, but of course they were always together in the other stories that are told over in John. So there's a possibility that maybe they all dwelled together in the same home, or at least lived real close to each other. They evidently had a large enough abode or home that they could accommodate numerous people, because they were opening up their home for Jesus and his disciples to come in and eat and dwell. And the thing we got to remember about Jesus, every time we see a movie or a show about Jesus, or we think about Jesus and the apostles, it's always Jesus and the 12 apostles that are walking around. But the thing we got to remember is there was a lot bigger following than that followed Jesus around. As a matter of fact, the reason I mentioned about what happened earlier is Jesus had just sent 72 disciples out and given them gifts to be able to cast out demons and those sort of things. So he didn't just send out 72 people. He sent out 72 people that he had a tremendous amount of faith in, and that he felt very close and felt strongly that they had a strong faith. And so there's a possibility that more than just 13 people were walking into this village and heading to their home. So we got to think that there's a good possibility that maybe there was more than just 13 people showing up at the home of Martha. And it didn't have to be a huge house. Man, 13 people in our house, it's going to look, I can give 13 people shelter. That's not a problem, but it's going to look like a grenade went off because there's going to be bodies laying all over the floor. And that's okay if you're looking for shelter. But we got to think that maybe they had a rather large abode. We think that maybe they may have had a little wealth, right? Because think about Mary was able to possess that expensive bottle of perfume on which she emptied onto Jesus' feet and anointed his feet later in John. And we're going to talk about that again in just a little bit, where she wiped it with her hair. So this was a very costly bottle of perfume. So whether she bought it, whether she traded for it, or whether she inherited it, or whatever the case may be, it was a gift. She actually had this very expensive bottle of perfume that she used on Jesus. And so just a few things that kind of maybe set a background for what we're looking at as Jesus and these disciples come into Martha's home to be with them. It tells us that Martha opened her home to them. So it kind of leads me to think that maybe Martha was she the oldest sister? Maybe she's the responsible sister. Okay, maybe she's the one who owned the home. Maybe she was the one that the home was left to, because it said that she opened her home to them. And then it talks about Mary later on. And so there's always that possibility that maybe it seems like Martha was the more responsible one, at least at this point here. It says that Martha had a sister, and her name was Mary. And what did Mary do? Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, listening to everything that he said. This was a little bit against the grain. Back in those times, in that Jewish culture, there were some pretty definitive roles for men and women. Generally, men were the one who sat at the feet of their rabbi, and they listened and they were taught. And women sort of, women took care of the home. Women were the host. Women provided. Women cooked. There was those very specific gender roles that took place. Most of when you hear about the great teachers, the great Jewish teachers, you don't hear a lot about women being allowed into the schools and into the teachings of those rabbis. But Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. Because Mary knew something. Mary knew that there was something special about this guy. Mary knew that there was something that she needed to focus on and listen to. And so maybe even contrary to what might be her normal position as a host or a guest host to these people that had come in, she put all that aside and she went and she focused solely on Jesus. Again, we don't know how many people came into the building that day, into their home. I mean, it's almost rude if this whole group came into my home and we welcomed all of you, and I went and sat down and I sat the whole time and just talked to Chief Edgar. And I didn't really focus on anybody else in the group or talk to you. Think, well, man, that's kind of rude, But that's what Mary did. Mary saw something very specific in Jesus, something very special that she picked up on. And so she sat at Jesus' feet. It would be more common for Mary to be up helping Martha with the serving and the hosting and that sort of thing. Martha, on the other hand, was the one who had opened her home up. She was the one who was playing host to everybody. Mary, and we'll see this is the first of several other times that Mary found herself at Jesus' feet. If we look at John 11, verse 32, this was when Lazarus had died and Jesus had come to comfort the sisters and also to raise Lazarus from his sleep. Martha comes out to him first. She sees Jesus and she comes out. They talk and Jesus says, well, he says, go get Mary. Mary comes out. And what does she do? In verse 32 it says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Again, Mary comes to Jesus. This is after our story here in Luke, as when Lazarus had died. And she immediately falls at Jesus' feet. And even in her frustration, disappointment, I don't know what would be a good word there, that Jesus had not hurried and came so that he could heal Lazarus and keep him from dying. Even in her, why Jesus, why not? What did she do? She fell at his feet because she recognized that is where she belonged. That was her place when she was in the midst, face to face, of Jesus. If we look at John 12, verse 3, this was when Mary actually took the perfume that we talked about and anointed Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And it said, then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume, and she poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. So again, she's at Jesus' feet. Okay. She is drawn to a submissive posture anytime she's around Jesus. I listen to a lot of Christian music. As a matter of fact, last night Kim and I got a chance to watch the K-Love Awards that has been recorded. It was great for us because we had some things that were going on in our heads, and just like any other time when we start to focus on God, all that other stuff just goes away. But there's a song that Mercy Me is actually their very first hit that came out with. It's called I Can Only Imagine. Maybe you've seen the movie before. It's a great movie. And part of the song talks about, really, what am I going to do when I'm standing face to face with Jesus? Am I going to dance? Am I going to sing? Am I going to fall on my face and fall on my knees and not even be able to speak because I'm in so much awe? I know for me, it's going to be just as prostrate as I can get and just not able to speak because of the presence of the glory. Anytime you see some people who have been in the presence of God, even in the Old Testament, they get prostrate. They're faced with that glory. They're faced with that power. They're faced face to face with God. And I'm guessing that when you're face to face with God, you see a reflection of your sin probably and who you really are. And it's probably a very humbling experience. And so this Mary sees this. Mary knows, and she finds her place at Jesus' feet. And she's drawn to that submissive posture when in the presence of Jesus. But now Martha, this story isn't just about Mary. This story is about Martha too. Martha found herself being busy making preparations for Jesus and the guest. You know, the Bible doesn't tell us if they were given any heads up about, is Jesus coming? Probably didn't get an RSVP saying, hey, prepare for me and 36 of my closest friends, and we're going to join you, tomorrow afternoon. She may have known that there was a possibility that he was coming to town because some of those disciples that were sent out, those 72, had probably come through Bethany and had said, look, this guy, the Messiah that we're telling you about, he's going to be coming through the town here next week, tomorrow, whatever the case may be. So maybe they were like, oh, great, Jesus is coming. Let's prepare, and we'll host them when they come. Whatever it was, there probably wasn't enough time or enough knowledge to really prepare like you would need to prepare if you were hosting that many people and that type of person. If you're having the Messiah come to your home, the person you believe is the Son of God, you're going to want things to be very special. So Martha was making preparations, probably spending a lot of time cooking and getting ready. Isn't that what we do here in the South? can't speak for anybody if there's any Yankees in the group. I don't know what y'all do where you come from. Here in the South, right, when we socialize, when we welcome, there's going to be some food somewhere involved. I had some cousins from California, and they came to visit us a few times, and I'd say, what do y'all want to eat? And they'd say, man, you got to feed us. And I said, well, I got to feed you. You ain't got to eat it, but I got to put some food out. If I don't put food out, I may wind up losing my Southern card. So there's going to be food, and there's going to be some kind of Southern food for you. If you want to eat it, great. If you don't, it's there, and that's up to you. But just because we're talking about dinner and tables, I relate to that with our culture, that food is so very important. And so, Martha, she's giving it her all, right? She is working, bustling, trying to serve all these different people. There's drinks and food, and there's stuff that needs to be done. And she looks over, and there's Mary. Now remember, this is her sister. So this isn't just a friend or a woman. Now, I've got sisters, but a relationship between a brother and a sister, from what I understand, is different from sister to sister. Because I've seen my sisters, go at it before. So I know there's a love, and I know that there's a competition or whatever it is y'all want to call it with each other. But she looks over, and there's her sister. And she's, I got this, and I'll get this for you, and I'll get you some more. And she looks over, and there's Mary, sitting there staring at Jesus, listening to him. And she's like, you got to be kidding me. This is our home, or this is my home. We're hosting all these people. We're hosting Jesus. And so what does she do? She goes over to Jesus. And she says, Jesus, Mary's not helping me with any of this work of hosting this large group. She's just sitting here. Please, would you tell her to get up and help me? I need some help. Because she wanted to put out her very best for Jesus and the disciples. But wouldn't you? If you thought the Messiah was coming to your home and you were hosting, you would want the very best. You want everything to be just right. You ever been in a situation where you felt like you were the only one that was doing all the work? And you look over and there's either someone or there's people, and you just know they see you out of the corner of their eye. They won't make eye contact with you because you're doing some work, and you're thinking, I know you see me over here doing this, and I know I could use a hand, but man, you're not lifting a finger to help me out. It built a little resentment, doesn't it? Probably even in the best of us. I'm not the best of us, so I know it does me. I was raised, and I've spent a lifetime of, if there's a work to be done, we all work. And when the work's done, then we all rest. And so I feel where Martha's coming from. I really do. Well, what does Jesus tell her? It's probably not what she was looking for, right? It's not what she was wanting to hear. Jesus tells her, you're worried and you're upset about a lot of things right now. But there's really only one thing that matters. Mary has recognized and chosen that one thing, and it could never be taken away from her. Wow. Martha's like, okay. And maybe she's even thinking, I don't know, what does that mean? But what am I? But look at all that I'm doing. Look at all this service that I'm doing. But the fact is, Mary had separated things already that really aren't important with that one thing that is important. I can only imagine on the last day of our life as we look back, or if we get to the end of our life and we stand there with Jesus and we look back on our life and we think about those days where it was crazy and you were rushing and maybe you were speeding and you had to be 3 different places and the boss wanted something, there was something from work at that moment, you were just frazzled. When you look back on that and you're standing there with Jesus, is that going to matter at all? It's going to have no meaning whatsoever. None. But I'm the kind of person, and look, anytime I stand up here is usually a confessional. I have problems with that. And we're going to talk about that personality in just a few minutes. Mary had already figured out what that one thing was. And Martha hadn't seen yet. So how often, again, do we fail to separate our worldly anxieties and cares from time that we spend with and for God? I present to you that it may have been against Martha's nature. You see, I have to give some defense to Martha because I have to confess to you, I'm a little bit of a Martha myself. And so I have to give Martha a little bit of defense that it may have been against her human nature to be able to just let everything go and go sit down. Because if she had went and sat down, who's going to provide drinks for all these people? Who's going to serve the food? Who's going to serve? Who's going to do the things that need doing? And so that was probably a lot of Martha's reasoning. I believe that because I think that Martha felt probably an obligation to be a good host to Jesus and to the disciples. Again, this is either her home or she was the more responsible sister, maybe the older sister. So all of this she felt was sitting on her shoulders. And so she really felt an obligation to be a good host to Jesus. Possibly it was because it was seen as her role. Going back to one of the stories in John that we talked about, where Mary anoints Jesus' feet. If you look in verse 2 of chapter 12, it says that Jesus was visiting with Lazarus and a dinner was thrown in his honor. Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. This was after Jesus told Martha, you need to be more like Mary and not sweat the small things and focus on that one thing. We're back there at their house again and they're having a dinner honoring Jesus. What does it say is happening? Martha is serving. Lazarus is laid back with Jesus at the dinner table. And what does Mary do? In verse 3, Mary takes the perfume and pours it and anoints Jesus' feet. So we see that this was a common role for Martha. This was her place. Maybe this is where she felt comfortable serving others, helping others, providing for others. Now, I've never read the book, and I don't know a whole lot about love language. But my wife has taught me in 20 years that we do all have different love languages and that we all show love in different ways. And so maybe this is how Martha showed her love. And again, I have to tell you, I have a little bit of a confession that I'm a little bit of a Martha. I've taken multiple personality tests through the years, not psychiatric, made to do that, but just as an interest to see who I am and what makes me tick. And it always comes out a certain way, that I'm a servant and I'm a protector. That's always where I come out. And you go, wow, that's awesome. That would be great. And it would be great. When I say that, I go, yeah, I'm a servant and I'm a protector. Well, that's the positive part of it. We all have negative parts of our personalities. The negative part of my personality is the reason I'm a server and a protector is because my self-worth and my value of myself are related to what I do for other people. And so there's a selfish side to me doing things that I do. That is how I get my own self-worth. That is how I see my value in myself. Without that, I probably wouldn't recognize any value in myself. And so people like me, and I'm not the only one, you may see this in yourselves, that is what we do to create value in ourselves, so we have some self-esteem, so we feel some self-value, and we feel some self-worth. And so maybe, just maybe, this is part of what makes Martha tick also. Because I'll be honest, like I said before, I would probably be very upset if I was Martha and I was in the same situation and I was sweating bullets and running around trying to take care of everyone, and Mary was just sitting there taking up time with Jesus. I have a Martha confession, a story that I need to tell you. I was given the privilege to be part of the group that helped vet and work with the new selecting of the new youth leader, new youth minister, Bryson. And so one Saturday we had the youth were, and I don't even remember which candidate was working. I think they were at the bowling alley. They were finishing up. Several of us had come over here to set things up in the fellowship hall. So we had food. Everything was ready. At the same time, Chase, my youngest, had put an Xbox guitar game on Facebook. I had put it on there for him and was selling it. And a guy called me, said, "Man, I sure do want to buy that thing." I said, "Look, I really don't have time to meet you today. If you want to come to the church, I'd be more than happy to, just to let you buy it there, in the church parking lot. I'll meet you in the parking lot." So the guy shows up. He's probably 20 years old, maybe 19, something like that. He was either going or coming from work. I couldn't tell exactly where he worked. And I had just stopped long enough to run outside, grab it out of the car, out of my truck, go over and meet him. "Hey, man, I'm sure you're going to love this, yada, yada, yada." Got the money from him, good luck with it, whatever. Never, ever dawning on me. Not once, not till later that afternoon. "What are you doing? You had a young man here in the church parking lot, and you didn't say, 'Man, you ought to come in and join us. We got some food in here. We're playing games. We're having a great time. As a matter of fact, you get a chance to maybe even meet our new youth men.'" Never once did I think about that. And I was so ashamed of myself. And I mean that. I was so ashamed that I felt God had put somebody in front of me. And I couldn't see the moment. I couldn't see the thing for all the clutter that was in my brain. I went back and I had the guy's Facebook message, whatever, where I messaged him once or twice. And I did. I apologized to him. I said, "Man, I'm so sorry. I should have invited you in. I would love for you." Now, never heard back from him. Okay. Let us not get so occupied with what we feel is important that we miss the thing, that one thing. I think we all have to be careful with our service here at the church. And look, I'm telling you, I picked this because I knew this was going to take me to a place that I probably didn't like, but this was going to take me through a journey that I needed to go through. I think we all need to be careful with our service at the church, because we are all called to serve, but we are not called to resent serving. Now think about that for a second. We're all called to serve Christ and His church and others, but none of us are called to resent serving Christ. Mark 10:45 says, For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give His life as a ransom." As Jesus was our perfect example of service. 1 Peter 4:10, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." We should serve. Back up one verse from that. 1 Peter 4:9. 1 Peter 4:9 says, "Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling." Man, you think Jesus knew us? You think God knew us? You think He had Peter write this? because he knows the human nature. So easy. So easy to want to serve. So easy to say, man, I want to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I teach this, and it doesn't matter. Everything, it's such a blessing. There are so many people that do so many different things here at this church, just at this church, and even away from this church. My goodness, think of all the outreach that we do. There are so many different people doing so many different things, but we can't allow ourselves to get so busy that we start becoming resentful of the fact that we're doing it, or that we're doing it and somebody else isn't helping. Because if that happens, then aren't we resenting the fact that we're serving God? We're serving God. We can't let that happen. So, how do we get from being a Martha to a Mary? Well, I've got two things that came to my mind as I was thinking about this. And the first one is just by remembering the one thing. The one thing that I've been talking about tonight all the way through here. In Psalms 27:4, David says, "One thing I ask from the Lord. This only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple." Now here's a dude that had some stuff going on in his life. Think of everything that happened in David's life before he became king. Just trying to get there to the throne. Goodness, just the story of him as a teenage adolescent boy is enough for anybody to live off of in fame, with his faith in the killing of Goliath. But then, his troubles with Saul and being chased, by the king just to get to the crown. Oh, and now you're the king of Israel. And now you're involved in this romance thing and all. The guy's got a lot going on in his life, but in the middle of his life, he says, "One thing I ask from the Lord. The one thing I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life." Going back to what Jesus told Martha. Jesus told Martha that only one thing mattered. That she had so many things on her brain and she was dealing with so many different. One thing mattered. We need to remember that it don't matter where we're at in our life, that one thing is the one thing that matters. The other thing is, as I was talking about a minute ago, don't forget God. God should be the reason that we're serving. We shouldn't be serving in the church, outside the church, humanitarian efforts, evangelism. We shouldn't be doing any of that for any other reason than we want to serve the holy God that created us, that gives us all blessings and all gifts, and we glorify him. We are there to glorify him. We have to remember that everything that we should be doing when we're serving should be about God and about serving him. So I have a question for you. Which sister do you think had it figured out? Mary. No doubt. Jesus told us that. He told Martha that. Jesus had it figured out. So I guess the next question leads us to, which sister more accurately represents our lives? Are we so wrapped up in day-to-day and so wrapped up even in our service to God? Are we struggling with the chaos and the anxiety and the stress of serving so much that we're no longer serving? It's a duty. Nobody likes duty. Okay? I've never been on duty somewhere that I was excited and I was happy. Those of you that have been in the military, okay, Maybe you get a 96, you get 4 days off, you get liberty. Somebody's got to be there, and he's the duty, which means at some point in time, he's got to come back and do his 12 hours or whatever, sitting at a desk, walking, making sure everything's secured. He can't be out there having fun like everybody else is. When I was on the fire department, I was on duty. I loved my job, but I would much rather have been at home with my family or headed to T-Town to a football game or at the birthday party or at Christmas. It's not a duty. It's a service to God. And we should be thankful that we have that ability to serve Him. All right, we've got a few minutes left. Does anybody have any comments? Really didn't slow down a whole lot tonight to talk about feedback, but if anybody has a story or a thought, I would love to hear them.
You asked us if we were married or Martha, and I can relate a lot about circumstances and losing focus on what's really important. I said a while back, and I'll say again, that I think Satan's number one tool is busy. Busy, busy, busy about urgent stuff, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not important. Whether it's our jobs or fixing meals for somebody in this case, we get so caught up in busy, busy that we lose the focus of truly what's really important. And I appreciate you bringing out the idea of even our service can become a disservice to God if it turns into a duty or an obligation and we lose focus on why we're doing it to begin with.
Yeah, it's easy to feel that. I mean, we're only human. But I think that's when we got to be able to catch it, right? And correct that. You know, I don't know if Morgan, you might remember when, I don't know, were you there when we read the screw tape letters in the small group? I think that was one of the strategies that the demons were talking about is getting your person. If you've never read the screw tape letters, great book by C.S. Lewis, but you've got to be able to get out of the box just a little bit and think about it. But that was one of the strategies that the younger demon was given the advice to get his person to pull away from God, but to get him so busy in other things that he'll slowly see himself start to fade. And he won't even notice because his world's filled up. There won't be anything missing that he feels at that point, is being so busy. So I agree with you. Anybody else? With the kids? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking, so like in Psalm 23, David talks about, with my head with oil. And so we know that like anointing in the Old Testament was typically reserved for priests and prophets and kings, but occasionally could be used to anoint like an honored guest, right? But that would be the head, and Mary chose the feet. And so I just think it's really beautiful that she put herself at her king's feet and said, basically through her actions, like, I'm your servant.
Right.
And so just that act of humility, I think, is really beautiful.
It is. And I haven't done a lot of study. I didn't get into a lot of study. I know that in that part of the world, the feet have a very important meaning where we don't even see that here in this country or think about it. But the feet are actually very important and have important meanings depending, I guess, on how you use them. And so I think that was probably one of the reasons.
You know, to some degree, even the disciples were like Martha when they had the multitude of 5,000. They started thinking, instead of listening to what Jesus was saying, thinking, okay, how are we going to feed these people? We need to let them go so they can go get something to eat. We need to go get something to eat and things. And Jesus said, just gather around and see what you got. I mean, it wasn't how his priority was.
And look, it's encouraging to me that the people who were with Jesus and saw him do all these miracles, and they had every testimony that they didn't get it. And so sometimes when I get down on myself and I'm like, oh, wait, I'm not getting it. I'm like, well, the apostles didn't get it either. Not totally, not until the end when they saw it. But you would think that, yeah. I'm kind of like that. Think about that in the Old Testament. When God spoke to people, I'm thinking, if the clouds opened up and God spoke to me, it didn't matter what the voice said. I would go and do those things. But then I realized that the voice is speaking to me. It's just the cloud's not opening up and I'm not hearing the voice, but it's all right here. And it is speaking to me. So, all right. Well, I appreciate your attention tonight. Thank you very much. And come back for the rest of the series. We've got some great speakers that are going to be speaking over the next several weeks. And I know you're going to be blessed, and I will be too, because I plan on being here. Thank you.